Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are here at Tree City Church with our next episode of Tree City Testimonials, bringing faith and community together through testimony. I have here with me Michelle Lorance. And Michelle, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get going.
Well, I am the pastor's wife, but I also, I'm in charge of the kids ministry, which is pre-K through 5th grade, and then I'm also over the prayer ministry that meets on Wednesday nights.
All right. Well, let's dive right into it here, and let's talk about your testimony and what you're wanting to share tonight. And let's just hear what you have to say, because Psalms 66:16 says, "Come and hear, all of you who fear the Lord, and I will tell what he has done for my soul."
So the kind of part of the story I was going to tell was kind of how everything started with me. I always grew up knowing that there was a God and that he loved me, but we didn't actually go to church for a while. And I'd wanted to go to church, and so we tried to find a church. We're having a hard time finding one. And then ironically, we ended up at the place that my brother and I played soccer for years. And so we started going, and we started to get more involved with the church, and my parents were like, "You should really go to youth group." I was like, maybe I really shouldn't. And so they made us go, and we had to go for a certain amount of time. That was part of the thing. My brother and I had to go for however many weeks they had determined. And so we went, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. Because I was the shy person who I would go sit in the corner by myself and not talk to anybody, or I would hide behind my parents because I was that shy. And so I was not a fan. But then it came the time for me to be able to decide whether I wanted to still go or not. And at the time, I didn't realize why, but I chose to keep going. And I kept going even though I really didn't like it. And if it weren't for some of the amazing youth counselors that we had, I probably eventually would have stopped going, because they really got me involved and just really got me into the youth group and making friends and doing things in the youth group and those kinds of things. And so I've realized kind of since then that it was God who kept pulling me back, but I just didn't realize that that's how God was talking to me at that point. Because before I really started going to church, I didn't know how God talked to people. I mean, I just knew he loved me. I didn't know how he showed me or how he got me to do things. And so that was kind of his way of saying, "Hey, you need to be here. You need to keep going. I have big plans for you." And so I kept going, and I feel like the more I get involved with churches and ministries and things like that, not only the closer I get to God, but the more I come out of my shell. And so I feel like especially since that point, looking back from where I am now to where I was then, I'm still a shy person, but I'm a whole lot further out of my shell now than I was back then. I do a lot of things now that I never would have thought of that I would do back then.
Okay. Would you say that the ministry that you was in and the youth group that you experienced helped lead you to want to work with children?
Most definitely. Towards the end of when I was in high school, our youth group was actually all one big group, middle school and high school at one point, and then they split it so that the middle school was at a certain time, the high school met at a little bit of a different time. And so because of that, I got the opportunity to help lead some of the middle school groups towards the end of my high school years. And so because of that, when I went off to college, I actually ended up being discipled by a lady who was in charge of the middle schoolers at the church I went to in college. So I got involved with them there, and then I got back involved with my youth group once I moved back home. And so I feel like it just kind of always got me working back with kids.
Okay. Did it kind of influence you becoming a teacher also?
Probably Probably somewhat. I think I've always kind of wanted to be a teacher because I remember when I was a little girl, I always like playing teacher, and my brother hated it.
I bet he got detention a lot, didn't he?
I never gave detention, but I did give a lot of homework though, so that might have been why. But I definitely think it still kind of helped because we had it was a camp that was run by a group called Focus, Families of Children Under Stress, that ran a week out of our church every year. And it was for kids who had some kind of special need. And so I went there, and I became really involved with it and working with those kids and seeing just in that week the progress that they would make and the things that they would do, just getting to know them. I think that just furthered my interest in being a teacher and kind of being able to be with kids.
So how do you feel about this little loving place we have here?
It's definitely a lot smaller than any church I've ever gone to before. But I definitely think that's not a bad thing. I think it's good because it's more intimate. You really get to know the people better. There's more opportunities to really come up with the ideas of the things that are going to be going on in the church. I mean, for one of the cool things I think that we have here is our sensory room. The fact that we have a place for people with special needs to go to and be able to just, if they need a break, to be able to calm down or reset, they can go in there and reset and do those things. Whereas a lot of churches around here don't have that kind of thing. But because we're so small, and because we, aren't some mega church with hundreds of people, we have a little bit more flexibility in those kinds of things where we can really reach out to different people who they don't have the kind of resources that they need for other people in the community that are not being reached.
Well, Jesus definitely tells us that we're put on this place to serve. So that's what we definitely try to do for each and every person. We try to find something that someone needs, and we try to serve that purpose. So now down to my 3 questions. The first question, what's your strategy to maintain your faith and keep hope in everyday circumstances?
So I think one of the biggest strategies that I have is just to keep going in that situation. I've realized that there's a lot of times that I've gone through something hard or a rough patch, but in the end, God had a purpose for that time that I went through. And I have to tell myself, you might not know what's going on now, but God has a reason for that. And so in the future, you'll realize why you went through whatever it was that you went through. And the other kind of part of that is just trying to find the positive in that situation. I really feel like no matter what the situation is, you can find even the teeny tiniest bit of something positive in it. And so just trying to find those positives in those situations, even though sometimes they can be rough.
Yeah, keep your head up and just keep going. Huh? What words of encouragement or advice would you give someone experiencing a similar situation as your testimony?
I think the biggest thing is just to keep going. Don't give up. Because I feel like if I would have given up, then I may not have even been here in this place today. I mean, I think if I wouldn't have just kept going through, even though it was a time when I just really did not like going, I think I would have eventually given up and just said, what's the point in this? And I may not even have a relationship with Christ if I wouldn't have kept going. And so I think because of that, I try to just tell people, I know it's rough, I know it's hard, but if you keep going, I promise in the end, something good will come out of it.
All right. And last but not least, what's your go-to scripture, story, psalm, or prayer?
My go-to scripture is Joshua 1:9, because I feel like it just kind of encompasses a lot of how I kind of try to deal with life, just because it talks about being strong and courageous, and I think sometimes being strong and courageous is even just showing up to a place sometimes. It's not necessarily doing everything that is right there, but sometimes just being in that place, going to that event, going to that outreach or, whatever it may be, just being there is showing up and being courageous. And another part of it, the second part of it, is kind of don't be afraid or discouraged, because there's a lot of times that things come our way that it's hard and it's easy to get discouraged or be afraid of what's coming. And so we have to just be able to kind of put on that brave face and just go through with it, because the last part of that verse says that God's with us wherever we go. Mm-hmm. And so if he brought us there, there's a reason why he brought us there. And so we just need to have that faith that he'll continue to be there with us no matter where it is that he brings us.
Okay. Well, I thank you for coming on and sharing your testimony. And what she's telling you is basically what we always try to say is just don't give up, keep pressing. God says he'll go with you even until the very end. We are here at 1123 Sparta Street. Our services is Sundays at 10:30. Come see us. We'll show you the kind of love that we are willing to show anybody. Until then, this is Chad Cagle, your worship leader here at Tree City Church.